Hello everyone and welcome to our educational session. My name is Paul Arsov and I'm the founder of the Decentralized Web project. I'm going to talk about this and several other projects in the end of this presentation, but the topic today is part 2 of present day state of US currency and governance. And I'm going to start with the Americas or the US developmental challenge in the tariff era. To understand America's 2025 crisis through another lens, we can examine it as a developmental challenge using the psychologist Claire Graves' framework of human value systems, later popularized as spiral dynamics. The Trump administration approach to trade and monetary policy remains dominated by red power dynamics, unilateral tariff impositions, blue order maintenance, abolish appeals to economic sovereignty, and orange strategic optimization, transactional deal making. These developmental stages emphasize power, authority, and strategic advantage rather than strategic understanding or holistic integration. Consider how red power dynamics manifest in 2025 and 2026 tariff regimes. The bypassing of Congress, despite the Constitution explicitly granting it tariff authority, represents a power-centered governance at its most elemental. When Treasury Secretary Marcus Reynolds declared in his April press conference that America will no longer be taking advantage in trade, he wasn't articulating policy nuance but raw power assertion. This approach succeeded in gaining immediate compliance, but has generated destabilizing resistance through the global trading systems. The blue order maintenance perspective appears in the quasi-religious devotion to economic nationalism. When officials insist that tariffs will restore American manufacturing sovereignty, despite overwhelming evidence that global supply chains cannot be quickly nationalized, they appeal to an absolutist belief system rather than empirical reality. This rigid orthodoxy prevents adaptive responses to economic complexity. Orange achievement orientation dominates the administration market messaging, where tariffs become simply negotiating tactics rather than fundamental policy shifts. The assumption that deal-making prowess can compensate for systemic disruption reflects this developmental level limitation. Treating complex adaptive systems as transactional poker games. What America now requires is evolution towards green, communitarian concern, addressing how tariffs policies impact all citizens, including consumers facing higher prices, and yellow systems thinking, understanding the integral relationship between governance process, trade relations, and currency stability. These more developed perspectives would recognize that maintaining a global reserve currency requires not just power assertion or deal-making skill, but constitutional governance and systemic integration. Constitutional scholar Lawrence Tribe highlighted this developmental challenge when he observed that Congress' failure to assert its constitutional tariff authority, despite bipartisan proposals like the Trade Review Act of 2025, enables executive overreach by abdicating its proper role in the separation of powers. The Republican-controlled Congress' reluctance to challenge these tariffs, while House leadership, particularly passive, reflects developmental regression rather than evolution. A more evolved approach would recognize that monetary stability, trade policy, and constitutional governance are inseparable components of a single integrated systems. Markets speak through signals, not manifestos. The international response to America's 2025 and 2026 tariff actions and constitutional overreach has been immediate and unmistakable, appearing in capital flight, hedging strategies, and accelerating shift in reserve holdings that are no longer subtle or gradual. Consider the sharp decline in foreign participation at the Treasury auction following the April 2025 implementation of the 54 China tariff. This isn't incremental adaptation but strategic repositioning, what game theorists would call a dominant strategy response to increased risk. Similarly, when Saudi Arabia announced in May 2025 that it would accept yuan for 15% of its oil sales, they weren't merely contemplating alternatives but implementing them in direct response to American trade unpredictability. These signals function as communication in a system where formal diplomatic feedback has been rejected. When the administration dismissed the World Trade Organization complaints about tariffs legacy as global interference, and Congress failed to assert its constitutional authority through the proposed Trade Review Act, external factor provided feedback through more concrete channels. Their capital allocation decisions. As former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers noted in his June 2025 Financial Times review, global confidence in the dollar immediately rests on confidence in America's adherence to its own rules, both economic and constitutional. The new Civil Liberties Alliance legal challenge to the tariffs, claiming provide no authority for them and violates a no non-delegation doctrine, represents domestic recognition of the same constitutional concern international markets are expressing through portfolio adjustments. Both domestic and international actors are signaling that governance legitimacy and economic stability are inseparable. The traditional transaction of this market signals into a citizen's consequences follows accelerated pattern in 2025. The 11% increase in consumer good prices since January disproportionately impacts lower income Americans. The manufacturing layoffs in tariff-sensitive industries like automotive and electronics create concentrated hardship in communities already struggling with economic transaction. The resulting economic stress falls primarily on those with the least financial cushion, the very citizens most reliant on predictable governance. This market signaling isn't punitive but informational. It represents the necessary feedback that governance systems require to adapt and evolve. The question isn't whether this feedback would continue. It has intensified, but whether America can receive and integrate it constructively rather than narcissistically dismissing it as foreign manipulation or psychopathically ignoring its human consequences for American workers and consumers. US and America stands at a developmental crossroad in 2025 and 2026, more dramatic than any point since the constitutional crisis of Watergate. One path leads towards integration, acknowledging the shadow elements in our trade monetary governance system and evolving towards more functional patterns. The other leads towards regression, intensifying narcissistic exceptionalism embodied in unilateral tariffs, Machiavellian manipulation through emerging powers, and psychopathic detachments that constitutional processes as dysfunction worsens. Integration requires confronting uncomfortable truths made unavoidable by 2025 and 2026 tariffs actions. The dollar strength has enabled constitutional overreach by temporarily masking its consequences. Power advantage has substituted for institutional effectiveness. Executive authority has repeatedly expanded beyond constitutional boundaries. These patterns cannot constitute indefinitely in a complex adaptive system that ultimately requires alignment between monetary stability, trade relations, and constitutional governance. Most importantly, integration demands reconnecting trade and monetary systems with constitutional processes, not bypassing Congress through emergency powers, not governing through social announcement, rather than administrative procedures, but respecting the constitutional separation of powers even when it constrains executive preferences. This reconnection isn't idealistic but practical. Systems disconnected from their constitutional fundamentals eventually lose functionality, legitimacy, and international credibility. We are nascent integration efforts in the proposed Trade Review Act of 2025 and policy in 2026 that would require congressional approval of emergency tariffs within 60 days in judicial challenges like the new Civil Liberties Alliance case asserting that IEEPA provides no authority for tariffs and incorporate responses that explicitly address constitutional concerns alongside economic ones. These attempts represent developmental progress from power-based and rule-based approaches towards systems based on understanding that recognizes constitutional governance as essential to economic stability. The alternative, regression towards more primitive developmental levels, has already begun to manifest in increasingly authoritarian defense on tariff policies, more aggressive manipulation of emergency powers beyond their intended scope, and further detachment of trade policy from citizen welfare through bypassing due process. This regression pattern appears whenever systems face adaptive challenges that exceed their current developmental capacity and the simultaneous challenges of trade rebalancing, constitutional constraints, and currency stability certainly qualify. The contradiction in America's monetary trade governance system have reached a critical junction in 2025 and 2026. Either we evolve beyond the dark triad patterns manifested in emergency power tariffs, constitutional circumvention, and congressional abdication, or market forces will impose adaptation through a crisis that damages America's economic standing and citizens' welfare. Evolution requires integrating what has been split, reconnecting constitutional process with trade policy, linking international economic engagement with domestic prosperity, and aligning America's self-image with its actual governance functionality. This integration isn't merely technical but developmental, requiring more sophisticated understanding of constitutional systems and more mature approaches to power and responsibility than unilateral emergency declaration demonstrations. The first step is simply through though not easy, acknowledging the fractured mirror revealed by 2025 tariff regime. America's global currency role isn't a birthright but a responsibility predicated on governments effectiveness and constitutional legitimacy, we increasingly compromise through emergency power overreach. The economic sovereignty narrative that has substituted for congressional governance must give way to constitutional fidelity, not bypassing legislative authority through novel interpretations of emergency powers, but respecting constitutional boundaries even when they constrain executive preferences. As citizens, we must demand that this developmental progress, understanding that America's economic welfare depends on the constitutional guardrails not being tested. The Republican-controlled Congress must recall its constitutional role in trade and taxation rather than allowing its authority to be usurped and bypassed by executive fiat. The courts must enforce non-delegation principles and the major questions doctrine rather than permitting IEEPA to authorize tariffs Congress never contemplated when passing the law. We must recognize that no amount of power assertion through tariffs, no manipulation of emergency authorities, and no exceptionalism narrative can indefinitely sustain a reserve currency issued by a government that routinely bypasses its own constitutional process. Trade policy conducted via truth social announcement rather than administrative procedure, monetary stability assumed despite government governance unpredictability, and congressional authority surrendered despite explicit constitutional grants of power. These contradictions form a fractured mirror that international markets are already responding through their capital allocation decisions and trade policies. The fractured mirror doesn't lie. It shows precisely what needs addressing. Constitutional process must reclaim primacy over emergency powers. Congressional authority must assert itself in trade policy, and citizen welfare must take precedence over political signaling. The question in 2025 and 2026 is whether our institutions will finally look before market force the issue through crisis. And with this said, I'm ending this presentation. I'm coming back to the beginning of this presentation when I told you that my name is Paul Arsov and I'm the founder of the Decentralized Web project and several other projects. But the first Decentralized Web project built a decentralized communication advertising platform. It is, as I just said, monetized through advertising. The project has its own blockchain instance, which rewards users for joining the platform and becoming users of the Decentralized Web project, and it rewards users for inviting other people to become users on our platform, and it also rewards users for viewing advertising with tokens generated on our blockchain instance. With this said, I like to tell you the name and the URL of this project. It is decentralizedweb.org. Decentralized and web, these are two words, and they're typed all together. Decentralized web. Then there is dot and it ends with org. The meaning we put in decentralization is different than the meaning put by blockchain technology. We view blockchain technology as fundamentally flawed and not suitable to drive decentralization. And in our implementation of decentralization, we allow direct communication from user to user without going through a third party, namely a web server or a central point collecting information and then distributing this information back to the user. Once again, we allow only direct communication from user to user. With this said, I'm ending talking about this project. The second project that I want to talk about is our marketplace and collection of non-fungible tokens or NFTs based on three-dimensional objects. With three-dimensional objects, there has to be a special software which generates and creates these three-dimensional objects. And traditionally, creators of 3D objects, they were using standard and commercial three-dimensional object creation software. And the most popular choices are two game engines, one of them called Unity and the other one is called Unreal. But from the very beginning in our project, we decided to build our own 3D software engine, and what it does, it opens a window. Our 3D software engine, it opens a window on a computer screen, then it loads and displays the 3D object, and then it starts moving this 3D object in a way of animating this 3D object that was created by this 3D software engine. But in addition to these basic and initial capabilities, our own 3D software engine has multiple additional capabilities. The first additional capability of our 3D software engine is speaking, and our 3D NFTs can speak in one of three different voices, namely a male voice, a female voice, or a whisper kind of a voice. In addition to the three basic voices, there are three different flavors of voices. Voice can be spoken either in a fast speed or in a slow speed or in a normal speed manner. The next additional and important capability of our 3D software engine is the capability of voice recognition. Our 3D NFTs can recognize a voice command, and if we have a 3D NFT which is animated in a random fashion moving around the window, then we can issue our very first voice command to this 3D NFT to stop moving. And then the 3D NFT is going to stand still and stop moving. We can issue following voice commands to the 3D NFT to move left, move right, move up, move down, zoom in, zoom out, rotate. And then the 3D NFT is going to fulfill each one of these separate voice commands. The next additional and important capability of our 3D NFTs is the capability of them having a basic artificial intelligence. Wow, really wow. we can ask the 3D NFT what is your name, and then the 3D NFT is going to reply with their name. We can ask the 3D NFT who are you, and then the 3D NFT is going to reply in a few sentences of who they are. You can ask the 3D NFT to describe something. For example, describe Web3, or describe decentralization, or describe Russia. And then the 3D NFT is going to describe in few sentences about Web3 or decentralization or the country called Russia. The last additional but not least important capability of our 3D NFTs is the capability of them being displayed in a way of stereoscopics. What stereoscopics means is that part of the 3D NFT is going to be displayed in red or reddish colors, and another part of the 3D NFT is going to be displayed in blue or cyan colors. Then you can come to our 3D NFT marketplace, and now is the time to tell you the name and the URL of this 3D NFT marketplace. It is 3dnft.decentralizedweb.org. 3D NFT is typed in a way of the number 3 followed by the letter D followed by 3 other letters N, F, and T. And it is typed all together 3D NFT. Then there is dot, then there are 2 words which are typed all together, decentralized and web. Then there is dot and it ends with org. Once again, 3D NFT decentralizedweb.org. On the top of the main page and all of the other pages, you can see number of links. One of these links is a link to accessories, and when you click on this link, you're going to see that we are offering special glasses. When you click and order 1 pair of these glasses, you're going to see that one lens of these glasses is red and the other lens of these glasses is blue cyan. Then you can put these glasses on. You can request displaying the 3D NFT in a way of stereoscopics, and then you're going to see the 3D NFT as coming out of the flat two-dimensional computer screen, and you're going to see it in real 3 dimensions. With this said, I'm ending talking about our 3D NFT software engine and its capabilities and the collection of our 3D NFTs. But I like to mention something about our 3D NFT marketplace. In our 3D NFT marketplace, we have our own blockchain instance, and this blockchain instance runs Ethereum software, and it is the same software which runs on Ethereum mainnet. It runs on Polygon Matic chain, it runs on Avalanche Avax chain, and it runs on many other famous or not so famous blockchains in existence. In addition to by having our own blockchain instance, then we do not charge our users gas fees for the creation of the non-fungible tokens or NFTs, and we do not charge our users for transactions of transfer of ownership from one user to another user. But in addition to this, we allow buying and receiving proceedings from sale in multiple crypto coins. Currently, the choices include Solana Sol, Polygon Matic Pol, Avalanche AVAX, and Qcoin, which is a big centralized crypto exchange. They have a coin called KCS. But in addition to buying and selling in crypto, we have a second parallel and independent way of buying and selling 3D NFTs, and it is done entirely in fiat currency. If you are a user and you come to our 3D NFT marketplace and you click and browse through our 3D NFTs, then when you choose one particular 3D NFT that you want to buy, you're going to be presented with a drop-down menu asking you to select between 4 different crypto coins and a fifth choice of paying with fiat currency. If you click and select payment with fiat currency, then you're going to be asked to put the number of your debit or credit card, expiration date, CVC, and when you click to complete the transaction, what is going to happen is there is going to be a transaction and conversion from your national fiat currency, which could be different than US dollars, and the payment is going to be converted to US dollars and deposited in our bank account. Then we are going to make a transaction and transfer of ownership from our 3D NFT marketplace to you, and now you become the first user of this 3D NFT. Then you can play with this 3D NFT for a while, and you can decide to put this 3D NFT for sale. You decide on the price that you want to put for sale, and let's say there's a second user who comes to our 3D NFT marketplace. They go through the same motions of browsing through 3D NFTs, and let's say they click and like in particular your 3D NFT that you put for sale. They're going to go through the same motions of selecting between crypto and fiat currency, and when they click to pay with fiat currency, what is going to happen is they're going to put their number of debit or credit card, expiration date, CVC, and when they click on the button to complete the transaction, then they're going to experience a conversion of their national fiat currency, and it is going to be converted to US dollars and deposited in our bank account. Then we are going to make a transfer from you to the second user, and now the second user becomes owner of this 3D NFT, and then we are going to make a transaction and conversion to your national fiat currency, and the payment is going to be deposited in your bank account in your national fiat currency. With this said, I'm ending talking about the second project. The third project built artificial intelligence agents, and these AI agents communicate exclusively with each other, and you, the human, is just an observer of this interaction between AI entities. With this said, I like to tell you the name and the URL of this project. It is ai2ai.decentralizedweb.org. AI to AI is typed in a way of the letter A, followed by the letter I, followed by the number 2, followed by the letter A and I. And it is typed all together AI to AI. Then there is dot, then there are two words, decentralized and web typed all together. Then there's dot and it ends with org. Once again, AI to AI dot decentralizedweb.org. With this said, I like to tell you an example of interaction, and let's say the first AI entity you assign it as a gender being female, you assign it as a voice with female voice and voice pitch. You assign it and generate an avatar for this AI entity, and then you assign and generate assign it a large language model and type an initial prompt for it to be very, very seductive. Then for the second AI entity, you select it to have a male voice, male gender, generate a male avatar for this AI. Then you put in the you select an AI model and then put a prompt to be very angry. Then you can start this interaction, and you are going to observe the first AI entity being female trying to seduce the second AI entity being male, and the male AI entity responding in an angry fashion to the female AI entity, and this interaction going back and forth between these two AI entities. With this set, I like to tell you that at some point you can put stop of this interaction, and at this point you have a choice to save the transcript of this interaction on your local system for your future viewing. And the second thing you can do is to share this interaction with the parameters of this interaction with other users on our AI to AI project website, and so that other users could type the same parameters of this interaction and then experience an interaction which is similar but not exactly the same as the interaction that you experienced, because large language models have a think and rules against repetition in their responses to humans. With this said, I'm ending talking about this project, and I like to mention two final projects that we're working on, and they're in development but not yet released. The first project is a token counter, and this project counts the number of tokens that you, the user, did spend when using this specific AI model or several other models provided by a specific AI models provider, a commercial AI models provider. And we're doing this because commercial AI providers are going towards abandoning flat fee monthly charge, and they move towards charging based on the number of tokens that users generate for a specific response. With this set, I like to tell you the second project that we're working on, and this second project is automation agent which records actions that you put on your computer, or be it a laptop or a mobile device, be it a phone or a tablet. And by recording this action, you can specify the start of recording of these actions of the user. Then you can note and make an action to stop this recording of actions, and then at this point you can label this recording that was made as a specific action, be it buying a specific food item from a specific food store, or buying a ticket for a concert at a specific venue at a specific date, or buying an airplane ticket for vacation for a specific range of dates and times, and buying this ticket from a specific airline or a range of airlines. With this said, I'm ending this presentation. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Have a nice evening, and goodbye.